Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy New Year. He is Indian Cowboy. I am Scott Spreitzer. We are DocSports.com's rating football show. I was about to say a name, but we don't have one yet, I see. So I see Scott's not bad. We've heard a few others. So we'll see what's going on over the next couple of weeks. But for now, it's Arun and Scott, and I'm happy with that. But we're going to be talking about a little bit of college football with what's remaining, and also talk about the final regular season week of the NFL, the games that matter in the NFL this week in just a moment. As always, if you're not yet a member at DocSports.com and just want to give it a trial run, click on the link below the video. Get yourself set up for a free $60 account, which you can then use on any of our daily packages over at DocSports.com. Listen, Arun, we haven't spent too much time patting ourselves on the back, but I'm going to in this particular case because this is day one after cashing the 8-unit bowl game of the year on the Ohio State Buckeyes. So I just wanted to tell everybody who chimed in, who called in, and bought the plays over at DocSports.com, a sincere thank you for jumping on board. It was a great reaction to the game, and I do appreciate all of you who come on board, in the wins and go through some of the losses with us. But it was a 3-0 sweep this year in college football with 8-unit plays, having another bowl winning season. So, and man, I got to tell you, I see my family and I, we're down at Caesar's Palace all day on New Year's Day, and we're walking through, and I'm trying to kind of avoid the game a little bit. I don't want to get stressed out when I'm with family. You know how that goes sometimes. So I was recording it at home so I could watch it later in the day without knowing the score. Well, I hear all this loud, crazy cheering as we're walking through the casino, and I look up and I see 24-0 Buckeyes. I believe it was 34-0 Buckeyes. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this is beautiful. Listen, I didn't expect it to be that easy and open up a lead that quick, I see, but we got there. So happy about that. But that sets up Ohio State, Texas. And we don't have the second game set up yet because we're cutting this video a little bit before Georgia and Notre Dame kick off on Thursday. But we do know Ohio State 6.5. I see that total of 53.5 game being played at AT&T Stadium. So a virtual home game for Texas. But the Buckeye fans will turn out in droves.
Yeah. I mean, look, Texas has won, but they have not looked that impressive. Right. And I think that's something that we can all sort of agree on, that some people feel like Texas has kind of looked sketchy. They looked a little sketchy against Clemson, definitely looked sketchy against Arizona State. The public's going to be all over Texas this game. You know what I mean? And, it's what everybody wanted to see, the Big Ten face the SEC, and they're going to get a crack at it here. It's interesting to see how Texas will respond as the underdog versus the favorite. I think I'll be interested to see how they respond, and they'll be coached up. And I don't know. I think Ohio State, these days you don't look at too much of what the public is on, because you're just, the way that the odds make it, because there's so many people betting now. There's so many people betting these days that I don't think they're trying to. I think they're just trying to protect themselves from taking a huge hit. So I think from that perspective, what else can you set them at besides Ohio State? So many people are just going to keep jumping. If you put Ohio State is -2.5 again, you're going to get a 75-25 split, and it's going to be on Ohio State. So I actually like the under in this game a lot because I don't think Ohio State will start off as fast as they did last time. And at the same time, I think Texas will look to keep that Ohio State offense off the field too. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see this game go under. I have a small lean on Texas, but I don't fully trust Texas either. So yeah, I would say a small lean on the under in this game for me.
Yeah, the reason I liked Ohio State as much as I did against Oregon was the Oregon defense. I just didn't trust the Oregon defense. I thought it was probably the least efficient defense of the playoff teams once we got past that first round. And, Texas isn't in the same ballpark defensively. Well, we're going to discuss this game again next week's show because it doesn't go till Friday, January 10th. So when we're talking NFL playoffs opening round, we'll also be talking about this a little bit more. I will say this, it was interesting because fourth quarter or late third quarter, when the game was cemented for the Buckeyes, I did get a couple of texts. What do you make Ohio State, Texas? And I thought it's got to at least be 6.5. It's got to be. Otherwise, you're going to get, like you were saying, if it was low, it's going to be all Ohio State money and nobody's going to take Texas at 3 or whatever. And then I saw a couple of books jump out that tried to get out in front of it like they do at times. And they made that number 4.5 to open. I'm like, you're not going to get any Texas money. And immediately the other books started coming in at 6.5, 6.5, right around there. And there's more 6s than 6.5s as we speak. But, the books that waited around, the smarter books, man, they knew what they were doing. So now they're getting, a little bit more money on Texas. We're at 4.5. I just thought that was a foolish opening number by a couple of books. Again, small limit books that try to get out in front of it. I get it. We'll dissect this game and also, of course, the Penn State versus Notre Dame Georgia winner on next week's show when we talk about also, again, the opening round of the NFL playoffs. And speaking of the NFL, let's move to Saturday's games. I see the Browns at Baltimore. Baltimore 19-point favorite in this one. And boy, that total right now sitting at what is it, about 41.5. I'm kind of looking at my screen for the lines, and it's basically 41.5. Saw a couple of 41s out there. And of course, it's a game that Baltimore wants to win this week because they've got a chance here to, lock things up as far as the division is concerned. With a win, they can clinch the number 3 seed.
Yeah, I mean, we've been down this road before, and Baltimore gets put as a heavy favorite. And people are tempted to take the other side. Remember that Giants game, which didn't work out?
Yeah.
And they covered against the Giants. There's only one way to look at this, man, and that is you can put this line at around even 22, and I would still take Baltimore at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm not backing off Baltimore. 68% of the public is going to start the game up 20-0, and it's not going to matter because you have a Baltimore team that they've lost to Cleveland back-to-back games, actually, which is kind of rare. They've lost back-to-back to Cleveland, and including 29-24 last time. Cleveland put up – sorry, I got a little scratch in my throat. Cleveland put up was only 21 points in the last 3 games. So, I mean, they've really struggled to put up points, have consecutively gone under 7, 6, and then 3 points against KC, Cincinnati, and Miami. And the Baltimore comes in throttling Houston 31-2. I mean, they literally beat them 31-2. And I think there's only one way to look at this game. I know this line is huge, but I think it's pretty simple. You get Baltimore here, who gets double revenge. They also need this game, and Cleveland can't score. Give me Baltimore.
Yeah, Cleveland won the first minute, as you mentioned. It had to be one of Jameis Winston's best games of his NFL career. He was unstoppable in that game. He's the emergency third quarterback, it looks like, for this game. And it sounds like from the Cleveland coaching staff listening to their press conference this week, it's going to be DTR, and we're going to probably see Bailey Zappi in this game. So it's almost like a preseason game for the Cleveland Browns. And you know what Harbaugh did for many years in preseason, so I'm kind of with you. I'm treating it like that they're going to be able to hammer the Cleveland Browns on this one. Other Saturday action, you got the Bengals laying 1.5, the total 48. They are at Pittsburgh. Cincy is alive by that much. They're barely alive. They need a win here. They need some help on Sunday. We have the outstanding December and January. Joe Burrow straight up against the spread numbers against Tomlin and his amazing dog in the division numbers. It's a tough game to trust either side for me in this one. I see your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm going to back the Bengals because the Bengals are fantastic in winning useless ball games. And I think this is going to be one of those situations now where they're going to get up to win another wonderful useless ball game. They did beat Denver, which is very impressive. But it was sort of useless because, Denver is going to beat Kansas City because Kansas City could care less. So they're going to lay down this week, and Denver is going to win their must-win game. And, Cincinnati beat Denver, Cleveland, Tennessee, and Dallas. They lost to Pittsburgh 5 weeks ago. And, they can go back to so many games where they were so close. And they made a run at it at the end. And I think part of the problem is that Burrow starts the year pretty slow. I think that's part of the problem. But he also sent a message, if you listen to his press conference, telling the brass, look, keep their important players. Of course, I don't think he's going to take a pay cut, but he wanted to keep the important players on the team so they can make a run at it next year. I think it sends a message. This will be the last game that they play this year. And I think what will happen is they'll play well. They will get their revenge. They will win a conference game. And they'll build on next season going 5-0, 5 straight wins. And they'll say, look, keep this team together and add a couple defensive pieces. Don't let any of the offensive pieces go, or Joe Burrow is going to be upset. So I like the Bengals to keep the good times rolling. Important to send a message to their brass. And I think the Steelers have lost 3 in a row, but they also have revenge on the Steelers too.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh had that tough stretch. I mean, it was 3 games in 11 days. That's tough on a team like this who's getting incredible coaching but doesn't have the deepest talent in the NFL, Pittsburgh. But you're right about Cincy. We've talked about it a couple of times, so I won't beat it into the ground here. But, man, shore up that defense. Pay for a couple of defensive stars if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. And it sucks to see Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase sidelined for the postseason. It really does. So shore up that defense. Listen to Burrow. Keep the top players around, and you got something for 2025-26. Saints at Tampa Bay on Sunday. The Bucs laying 13.5 here, 43.5 the total. They can clinch the division with a win. The Buccaneers win, and they're in. They lose this one, and the Falcons win, and Tampa Bay's out. Here's an interesting stat for everybody that I found on Action Report. Over the last 34 years, eliminated teams have gone 105, 69, and 4, 60% against the spread the final 2 weeks of the season against teams that need to win to stay alive. That outstanding trend would point to the Saints in this one, plus all those points. They've covered 6 straight at Tampa, I see. I lean to the over in this one. This division has seen some crazy games, and I could see some points here.
Yeah, what's wild is that the total only came in at 43.5. Which really surprised me. But then again, what else would you put a Saints game at? The Saints obviously have scored 10 and 0 points their last 2 games, 10 against the Raiders and 0 against the Packers. And Tampa Bay throttled Carolina. This team has won 5 of 6. Honestly, they should have beaten Dallas too.
Sure.
So as a Falcons fan, I'm actually, I get it why Tampa Bay should be in the playoffs, even though Atlanta beat them twice, right, with Kirk. And the Falcons had a great effort against Penix. But again, I think they really need to look into letting go of their coach. I really like Raheem Morris a lot, but I think there's just certain things that need to be. I mean, look at what Kevin O'Connell's done with the Vikings. Sure. Honestly, one can argue the Falcons have the same amount of talent, if not more talent at this point. And it just comes down to coaching. So I think for this game, there's only one way to lean for me, and that's Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's all their hard work comes down to the division. All you have to do is destroy the heck out of the Saints. Sure. I think they can definitely put all their marbles into that. And it's a great opportunity for Baker to get back into the playoffs. Tampa Bay is a dangerous team when they get back in the playoffs. And I like Tampa Bay here.
Yeah, there's no way to go, I think, in this game as far as a side other than Tampa Bay or nothing. And I ignore that angle that I give you, okay? Like I said, it's 105 and 69, but that means it's lost 69 times, all right? So there you go. This could be number 70. Next up, you got the Dolphins laying a point at the Jets. The total sitting at 39. Miami trying to overcome that same angle that I just mentioned with Tampa Bay having to win this week just to have a chance to be in the postseason. They need a win. They need a Denver loss to KC. That's not going to happen. As bad as the Jets have been this season, they do own the better metrics between these two teams, the deep metrics that I look for, including the all-important yards per play margin metric. They're better than the Dolphins in that stat. So you got Ty Huntley, who is probably going to start again if Tua can't go. Huntley was decent last week. He was 22 of 26. Going into cold New Jersey, though, it's going to be interesting to see how many snaps Tyrod Taylor might get. Aaron Rodgers said this might be his swan song, not just as a Jet, but as an NFL quarterback. A lot of moving parts here, I see. What say you on this one?
I say Jets. And if this is Aaron Rodgers' last game, which could happen because I think Donald Trump's election win plays a role into this somewhat too. I would not be shocked at all to see Rodgers somewhat Rodgers is desperately trying to prove to the world that he's smart, know, and that he's let it be vaccinations, let it be, whatever his feud with Ryan Clark or whatever it is. I can totally see him going to work in politics for the Trump administration in something like he'll be the sports czar of the country, something ludicrous. You know what I mean? And I can see anything happen at this point. So I think that he clearly knows he's not going to win another Super Bowl. He clearly knows he's hurting his legacy. And if this is the last swan song and you can beat, first of all, they also have revenge against the Bills too. And this coaching staff is trying to keep their jobs for the following year too. And I think I could see them rallying behind with revenge. Also, you also have a quarterback in the Dolphins who's going to have a huge letdown coming into this game. There's no way he's going to be as successful against the Jets as he was against the Browns. And then with Aaron's last game as well, it makes a lot of sense. And I like the Jets here.
I'm with you. I just think it's a situation. But, as far as Aaron Rodgers, just an odd dude. Not everybody gets into Berkeley based on what's between the ears. And he's just a strange dude. And he can go off to his dark room after this game and figure out what he's going to do with the rest of his life. We've got the Chiefs at Denver. Denver up to 10.5. It's been got up another couple of points in the last, 24, 36 hours to get to 10.5. That total sitting at 40. And Denver wins this game against KC's reserves. It's just a matter of how much they win by. Listen, when the Broncos are in, they did blow it last week against Cincy. I will say this, that I was reminded of this. Somebody wrote an article this week, and I recalled it right away as soon as I read it. A few years ago, Kansas City was in the same spot a couple of years ago. And last week of the season, they played a bad Las Vegas Raiders team. And it was the reserves, no Mahomes, nobody key for KC on the field. They didn't care. They gave up almost 40 points. They lost by 17. I see this as the same feel to me. I think Denver wins this and covers that number, winning by 17 to 20 points by the time it's said and done.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that Sean Payton cares who Kansas City puts out there. He
Yeah.
could care less. He could put out a JV team of high school students and he beat them 70-0 because Sean Payton's an asshole. And and he knows
How do you
that.
really feel?
Yeah. I mean, but I mean, he's an asshole that you'd want to coach your team, though. I'd love Sean Payton as the coach of the Falcons but he's the guy that you wouldn't want to go against. But he's certainly, he could care less. And remember, Denver lost and Kansas City beat them 16-14 last time
Yeah.
in a game that Denver should have won. So now Denver's even more pissed. They could care less. As long as you have that red and white there, they want to throttle you. And I think they roll in here and they do exactly that. They would have throttled anybody, but coming off of a loss. I mean, they would have throttled anybody needing to win this game. And then they come off of a loss. And then they come off back-to-back losses. So now they're going to be super pissed. And I think they're going to – and they're at home as well. And he wants to go into the postseason on a good vibe. Yeah, I would lay 20.
Yeah, I think Denver just has their way with them. And I like assholes for head coaches on teams I like, by the way, as long as we're going to hit on that. You're Nick Saban, okay? I love these commercials he's doing when they have him looking like an a-hole out there every time with these, hey, check-in's at 3, but it's 2:55. Yeah, I know. I love all that stuff out of Saban. Osborne, as quiet as he was an asshole. He was a pain in the ass in the locker room when I was growing up in Nebraska. And I do shows with former Nebraska players, and they talk about it in a glowing way, in a respectful way. But I'll take an a-hole any time of the week when it comes to my football team. And you're right about Sean Payton. Speaking of assholes, Jim Harbaugh has been accused of being one at times. I'm fine with that because all he does is win. And he turns around underperforming programs and NFL teams and wins football games. They're laying 4.5 here in Las Vegas. We'll get a lot of Charger fans up here, so it won't be like Jacksonville a couple of weeks ago when there were 20,000 empty seats. The Charger fans will fill the stadium here. They've clinched a postseason berth. The thing about Harbaugh, and we just hyped on coaches we like, I don't see this guy sitting regulars and starters hardly at all in this game. That's just not his MO, even when he's got a playoff game wrapped up. The Raiders have been a bad first quarter team, so here's what I'm doing. Because he's not going to sit his starters, I don't believe Jim Harbaugh. I like him in the first quarter laying half a point, and you can even get plus $1.10 if you shop around. I really do like that. I think that he'll have his starters out there. Las Vegas stinks in the first quarter. Chargers minus half a point.
Yeah, I think that's a good lean. I think it's a good pick. The Chargers, of course, lost to Kansas City and Tampa Bay, and they won that huge game against Denver at home. That was everything in the world to them. And then, of course, they win against the Patriots. This line is sort of smells, but there are other lines that smell too, like every line against the Bears, right? Whenever the Bears are like a 4-point dog or 4.5-point dog and they get their throttled, right? We've seen that happen. Or even against, the books took it on the chin when they put the Lions only as a 4.5-point favorite against the Niners. That was a huge loss for the books. So, I think you either got to go to the Chargers, but if you don't want to look that obvious, I think you can look into the under, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the Raiders are a pretty good defense, and they've shown that consistently over the last, 6 weeks or so. I'd say 5 weeks or so. They've done pretty well on the defensive side, especially the last 3 weeks. They've given up 39 points in 3 games. So, I think you can look to the under. I think the Chargers will continue to play quality defense. I think they'll shore up things. I think you either got to go with the Chargers first quarter, like you said, or the Chargers for the game. Although the Raiders have won back-to-back games coming in. So indirectly, I like the Raiders, but the way I look at it is the under. So I like the under.
The one thing about him, I'm not an Antonio Pierce fan at all. I thought it was a horrible hire when it happened, but the team's playing hard for him, and I got to give him credit for that. He's not lost this team as bad as things have been this year in Las Vegas. Panthers at Atlanta. Talk about your favorite team, the Falcons, laying 8.5. The total 48 in this one. Atlanta is the third team in a must-win spot versus an eliminated team. And I already said that I'm ignoring it in that first game we talked about. And what do you think? Do you back the eliminated team here, or do you think Atlanta with Michael Penix back home drops the clutch and gets the cover?
Yeah, I like the Falcons here. I think the vibe in Atlanta is one and such that where they look to the future. Penix is 24 years old. He played really well against Washington. If they had Koo or another kicker that can make a field goal, they win that game. And now we're talking about a huge, a completely different situation here. But the Falcons made that change on Kirk Cousins too late, And but then again, I don't know, man. Kirk beat the Bucs twice.
Yeah.
He won every division game except one against the Saints, I think. So, I think it's pretty simple. I think you got to take the Falcons here. The Falcons come off of a loss. The bad part is Carolina comes off a bad loss, 14-48 against Tampa Bay. So they're going to be motivated too. They beat Arizona prior to that. And I thought Bryce Young at points, showed promise. And maybe he is getting better. They have 4 wins this year. But I think Atlanta coming off of a loss, it's very similar to the Giants game. And I think Atlanta, and remember, technically, Penix is 1-1, right? So if he wins this game, he ends the year 2-1. He also shows something to the home base too, and I think that matters to him. And very similar to the Bengals. The Falcons and Bengals are in very similar situations where I think they close the year out, they give the fans something to hope for. You want hope in a city or else you lose sales, and I think you're going to show them some hope by winning big here. And I like the Falcons here. The Falcons beat them 38-20 last time. Carolina could come in and step up, though. They scored 14 points in the last game. I do think Carolina shows up too. So I noticed the total is kind of high for a Falcons Panthers game. I like the over in this game the most.
Same here. I like the over, and I should clarify that Atlanta needs help from New Orleans to be able to catch Tampa Bay. So that's what they'll be looking at here. But again, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game that lands in the mid-50s by the time it is said and done. Commanders laying 6.5 at Dallas, total 44. Washington's clinched a playoff spot. I keep hearing people talking about, a win and they avoid the Eagles, a loss and they have to play in Philly, although there's also a scenario out there where they'd avoid Philly if Green Bay loses to the Bears. You're talking about a young quarterback and kind of a young, new-to-winning football team. I don't think they think about those things really. Hey, if we do this, we avoid Philly. I mean, that's getting a little bit deep. You just go out there and you do the X's and O's and try to beat one of your division rivals. But that's the scenario that they're involved in here. Jaden Daniels, man, 7-3 against the number when laying points his rookie season. We saw him work his magic last week. Dallas 2-6 against the number at home. And they failed to cover by almost 2 touchdowns per game in those outings. The Cowboys' little run got smashed last week by Philly. And listen, it's not going to be a premium play, but I got to go with Washington here, laying the 6.5. I know they don't need the game. I still lean that way. But again, it's not enough to make it a premium play. I'm not going to have a wager on this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game can go honestly either way. And I actually sort of like the under a little bit just because I can see Washington's defense playing a little better after not playing well against Atlanta. And at the same token, Dallas gave us up 41 points in their last game. And it's a very low total, I thought, to begin with. But it's funny, some of Dallas's games have been pretty low. That Eagles game was 37.5, and the game against Carolina at home was 41, and they always seem to go over the posted total. So the books have taken it on the chin with Dallas unders lately. I mean, the last 7 of 8 or 6 of 7 for Dallas has gone over. I leaned on Dallas in this game because these are the type of games, the useless games that Dallas would do well. They lost 7-41 to the Eagles. They'd beaten the Bucs in Carolina before that, and they'd beaten the Giants and Washington before that. Washington does have revenge, of course, coming into this game. At the very least, I think the defense steps up here. I don't know if the offense will or not. I do like Dallas slightly, but I like the under more.
All right. And the final game is the biggest game of the week, and that is the Vikings at Detroit on Sunday night with the Lions laying a field goal, total sitting at 56. And we know what's going on here and what's involved. I see the winner gets the number 1 seed. First things first, no matter who wins this game, I'd be looking for Amon-Ra St. Brown props. Like, will he score a touchdown? I saw it around even money on Thursday morning and even some plus $1.10s last night on Wednesday night. He tears up the Vikings. There's no doubt about that. Real quick note on this, favorites in primetime night games. How about 45-12, 79% run, including 5-0 straight up from this Lions team. And under Dan Campbell, the Lions 9-0 outright as favorites in night games. And here's the thing, if you like them, they won those 9 games by over 9 points per game on average. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Detroit beat them 31-29 early this year, and O'Connell is an unbelievable coach, and Minnesota rolls into this game having won 9 in a row. But the question can be asked, they did beat the Packers and they did beat Seattle, but everybody else sucked who they beat. They beat Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Bears, Arizona, Atlanta, Bears. So the Seahawks and Packers game were the 2 biggest that they had won. They lost to the Rams, by the way, which is one of their losses. And then you talk about the Lions, who've won 9 of their last 10. What a culture changer Dan Campbell is. He's a little psycho, but probably in a good way. It's a team that, beat San Fran 40-34, and then they beat the Bears, but they did lose to the Bills, and they also beat the Packers by 3. This game can go either way, to be honest with you. I actually sort of like Minnesota plus the points a little bit, but I can't take Minnesota here. because they do have revenge, and I do trust O'Connell. And Detroit's won this game the last 4 times as well. I kind of like the under a little bit, just because I don't think Detroit put up 40 points last game, and Minnesota knows that. Minnesota also gave up 31 points to them last time, and that 31 points is the most they've given up, I think, maybe all year, definitely over their last 10 games. That the most amount of points they've ever given up this season was against Detroit. So for that reason, it's an indirect play on Minnesota, but I like the under.
And guess where the public's going to be on that total on Sunday night, like they are in every primetime game.
Yeah,
they're going to be betting the over like crazy, and they're going to be thinking about, what was it, a 60-point game the first time these two teams met. And I agree with you there. I think this stays under the total on Sunday night. Listen, folks, if you want to jump on board and get that $60 free account, it's a real cool way to do it. You just click on that link below the video and you get yourself set up. And then you could use those free $60 on any of our daily packages over at DocSports.com. We both have our football packages, of course, up on Thursday afternoon, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. You'll be able to grab all of our plays. I see I've got a seven-unit play in NFL and a 5-unit play in a bowl game on Saturday. That would be Buffalo Liberty. Those are the highlights of this package this week. And we've had, again, another winning bowl season. What do you got going this weekend? Anything that you've decided on yet before we let you go?
Yeah, we've won 5 straight winning weeks. I've won 5 straight winning weeks in football, which is exciting. And last week was the 7-unit winner on Atlanta Falcons and the 6-unit on Miami of Ohio to rout Colorado State. And this week I'll have another 7-unit NFL. We're 5-0 in football top plays last 5 selections. And I'll have a 7-unit, probably a 6-unit on a bowl game as well. But yeah, man, looking forward to closing out the year on a great note.
He's Indian Cowboy. I'm Scott Spreitzer. We're going to be back next week. We'll get that video hopefully out by Wednesday night because we do have a college football playoff game on Thursday. That'll be the Penn State game. Then, of course, the game on Friday. And finally, playoff action in the NFL. For IC, I'm Scott. We are DocSports.com. And let's put them in the win column, everybody. We'll talk to you again next week.